Kyle, I was wondering, do you speak French, being as you're from Canada?
Well, that's a good question. I do speak French. I used to speak French much better than I do now.
Ah.
Yeah, I studied. In fact, I did my high school in French.
So you only did high school classes in French, not the classes before that.
Well, I think I started when I was in I started when I was in grade 7. So
Okay.
what we call junior high. I
Right.
started studying in French. So I spoke. Well, we spoke only in French in my history class, my math class, my geography class. The teacher spoke in French.
So the teacher
So-
spoke to the students in French, and the students spoke to the teacher back
Yeah,
in French.
Yeah, and we had to speak amongst ourselves
That was
in
my
French
next question.
as well.
But then only during the class. Then when
Well,
you went
during
out into the
class,
hall,
of
you
course,
spoke in
everybody-
English.
We spoke English as much as
Okay,
we were all
okay.
English speakers.
Right.
But in class, yeah, we had to speak French. So I learned it then.
Okay.
But the thing about living in Spain, I feel a lot of people ask me that about my French, and
Okay.
the thing is, I feel like as Spanish comes into my head, the French goes out.
So you have
unfortunately.
more, now you're speaking more Spanish, and so
Yeah.
you're speaking less French, and you
Yeah.
feel like you're losing your
Yeah,
French.
in fact, once I was driving a car and I crossed the border from Spain into France in a rental car.
Yep.
And I was stopped at a random traffic control,
Okay,
by the
yeah.
police, and they started asking me questions in French, and I thought, oh great, I'll practice my French.
Yeah.
So I started speaking in French.
So
French.
so you thought.
So I thought I started speaking in my French, and I just realized at that moment I hadn't spoken French in years.
Of course.
And what came out was a mix of words, and it was terrible because I understand perfectly when they're speaking
Oh,
French.
that's
I understand
nice.
perfectly, and the one officer turned to the other officer and
started
said,
laughing.
Well, no, and said in French, "Do you speak Spanish?" And I said, and I felt terrible. I thought, oh, but I'm
course.
speaking,
But I'm speaking French, or at least I'm trying
I'm
to
speaking
speak
French here, come on.
Okay.
So-
now, but do your parents speak French?
No, my parents don't speak French. My father's from Ottawa,
okay.
and a lot of people there do speak French, but officially that province is English.
Yeah.
But Ottawa is right across the river
Yeah.
from the province of Quebec, in a city called Hull,
Yeah.
which is in the province of Quebec, and there they would speak French.
They would speak French because, interestingly, I have to tell you what happened to me that I was shocked. I took a trip to Montreal,
Mm-hmm.
which, of course, is in the French-speaking part of Canada.
Yeah, in fact, did you know that Montreal is the second largest French-speaking city in the world?
I had no idea.
after
wow.
Paris.
After Paris, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah,
yeah.
fascinating. Yeah. Well, I went there to Montreal, and before I left, I said, well, I don't speak any French. And everybody told me, don't worry, they speak English too. Not everybody speaks
everybody.
English.
No, not
In
everybody.
fact, I was shocked that the people I encountered, most of the people didn't speak
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
And I actually got sick and had to go to a doctor.
Oh, really?
And I went to many doctors, and I couldn't find a doctor who spoke English.
Really?
So in the end, I ended up seeing a French-speaking doctor and talking to her in English, and she talking back to me in French.
In French?
Yeah.
Really?
So I didn't. At the
Yeah?
end, I didn't really know
Yeah.
what happened. You
Wow,
know, it was
wow.
very, very interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. So when you're at home, you speak obviously to your friends and to your family in English.
In English entirely, but in my province there are some towns. It's funny because there are some towns where people speak French. It's an English-speaking province, but there are a few communities where they speak French, and the French in those provinces
Yeah.
is called Acadian. It's Acadian French.
So they speak with a different
So
accent.
it's a different accent from the French in Quebec, the Quebecois French.
Okay.
Basically, these Protestants came over from France, and they decided to they came. Some of them came to Canada,
Yeah.
to eastern Canada, and they were called the Acadians, and then some of
Okay.
them went down to New Orleans and are known
sure.
it's known as the Cajun
Of course, the
culture
Cajuns.
in New Orleans. So the word Cajun and the word Acadian
Are
are related. And in
related.
fact, these people, because there's still a French-speaking community
In New Orleans,
New
yeah.
Orleans, this Cajun culture,
Right.
where they speak French.
Now-
And so they have some relationships, and they have festivals and parties where, and a lot of them are related, so that some of the Canadians will go down to New Orleans for these big Cajun barbecues and parties,
Okay.
and vice versa.
Okay, now you know quite a lot about history in your family because I know in my family it's typical. We talk a lot about history. My father studied history in English, and so my parents talk a lot about history. And when I was a child, and when we took road trips, during the road trip to Montana, my dad would talk to us about the history, the different battles, the Battle of Little Bighorn, and the different Indian tribes that were along the road, and he would tell us about history. He would talk to us about the history. And they also, in my family, my parents talk quite a lot about politics. So this is an interesting thing. Now you are a very talkative person, much like myself, much like me, and much like my parents.
I like to talk.
You do? You're quite a talker.
My brother talks more than I do, though.
I find that hard to believe.
My brother definitely talks more than I do. In my house, when we're having meals, like at Christmas time,
Yeah.
I'm the quiet one.
But
My
what
brother
do you
does all
talk
the
about
talking.
at a Christmas meal, for example?
Wow, we talk about everything. We have a lot to catch up on
Of
because my
course.
brother lives in Texas, as you know.
Right.
Now he lives in Texas, but he used to live in Malaysia.
Okay.
He used to live in Russia. He's lived all over the place, so he has
Okay.
lots to talk about. He tells us stories about his travels. I tell my family things about Spain, what
Yeah.
I'm doing. We always have a lot to talk about.
talk about.
We talk about things in our hometown, things that are
Okay.
happening. We have a lot of things to catch up on.
Sure. So you
know?
talk about the day-to-day things.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, do your parents talk to you about history and about culture?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we like to talk about, the people that we know. We like to
Okay.
catch up on, I wouldn't say the
What's
gossip,
happening.
but what's happening with our friends, what's happening with our relatives,
Okay.
and we like to catch up on that. I always get home every
Yeah.
Christmas.
All right.
and that's the thing I look forward to the most is talking to my family and talking to my old friends who maybe I haven't
course.
talked to in
Ages,
in
right?
ages. Yeah.
Well, it's been great talking to you. But
It's always great talking to you, Allison.
yeah, but I guess that's it for now.
All right.
All
Okay.
right, see
I'll
you
talk-
later.
Great. I'll talk to you soon.